Let's do some more practice simplifying rational expressions. Let's review the steps we have for doing that. Step one is to completely factor the numerator and the denominator. I would say the most common mistake I see is that people don't know how to factor. And when you don't factor, you can't do step number two, which asks you to divide out the common factors. And even though Pearson doesn't ask this, we're going to find restrictions for X, those non-permissible values, just so we continue to have practice. So let's go back here to questions 7 and 8. Find the simplified form and any restrictions. Pause your video and work on those. So we see for question 7, I factored the numerator and the denominator. I found that 2x plus 1 is common, and this expression in simplified form was equal to x plus 1 over 2x minus 1. We needed to find the restrictions. When we're finding restrictions, we're only looking at the denominator. The denominator cannot equal 0. So we factored and found that x cannot equal negative 1/2 and x cannot equal positive 1/2. Question 8 was a little bit tricky. I hope you noticed after factoring the numerator and the denominator that you have opposite factors. We see that here x is positive and here x is negative. In the numerator, 3 is negative, and in the denominator, 3 is positive. When we divide out opposite factors, it equals negative 1. So in simplified form, we have negative 3 over 3 plus x, or the negative of 3 plus x. Either of those is correct. So we have our expression in simplified form. And to find our restrictions, we said the denominator cannot equal 0, and we found that x cannot equal 3 or negative 3. Here are two more. Pause your video, find the simplest form of the expression, find any restrictions. Again, in question 9, we have opposite factors. When we divide them out, this equals negative 1. So this simplified to negative 1/8. And again, to find the restrictions, we're only looking at the denominator, but I want to point out that I'm going to only say that 4 minus p cannot equal 0. I'm not going to use this factor 8 because there's no variable here. We're looking for the values of the variable that make the expression undefined. 8 is never going to equal 0. So we see that 4 cannot equal p, or p cannot equal 4. I hope you were able to factor the numerator and the denominator here. If not, you need to go back to those quizzes, those questions in the homework assignments, the extra practice in your e-text, or on the Moodle page, the worksheets I've provided for you, and get more practice. You need to know how to factor. Now, you also have to pay attention to whether or not Pearson is asking for your answer to be in factored form. So if you're asked for factored form, you're going to leave it like this. If you're not asked for factored form, you need to open the brackets and use the distributive property. But it's up to you to read carefully and give what's being asked for. If not, you might be marked wrong. In fact, I know Pearson will mark it wrong if you don't give what's asked for. So please read carefully. We're looking for the restrictions. The denominator cannot equal 0. We already factored that, so I'm just going to write it out in factored form here. The denominator cannot equal 0. And I'm just looking at the factors that contain x. 3 is never going to equal 0. I see that x cannot equal -8 or -1. Two last questions for you to practice. Pause your video, write these in simplified form, find any restrictions. You should have noticed in question 11 that we had opposite factors. When we divide those out, it equals -1. Again, you may be asked to leave your answer in factored form. If not, open the brackets and distribute the -1. When we're finding restrictions, we're just looking at the denominator. We see that x cannot equal 2. Again, you should have been able to factor the numerator and the denominator. If this is difficult for you, more practice is needed, or perhaps you need to make an appointment and speak with me. So here's our expression in simplest form. And one final reminder, when you're looking for restrictions, you are only saying the denominator cannot equal 0. So we see that, what is going on here? We see that x cannot equal 7/3 and x cannot equal -3.